Good morning, noon, evening or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is Alegende and welcome back to World of Tanks and the greatest of games series. Today, once again, with 3 separate replays for you to show you each battle some of the best, greatest, most important moments. And there is a theme among these 3 replays, namely teamwork. Because teamwork makes the dream work. So in this replay I am with Backstabber, which is totally a wrong name to have in this kind of teamwork video. He's not going to backstab me at all. We are driving our 113 and WZ-111-5A, the tier 10 Chinese heavy tanks. The one who is still in a tech tree and the other one, which I drive right here, the 113, is now a collector's vehicle. So at first we decide not to go towards the south side of the map, because a lot of our teammates are already going right there. Instead we are maintaining a central position, since the south flank is pretty much secured. And right here we prevent a potential flanking maneuver of the enemy team. And for quite some time we just stay here, playing very carefully, very defensive, in order to, well, spot or hold off any attempts of the enemy to control this particular bottleneck of the map. However, it is at this moment that we notice that the north flank is struggling and, well, the south is still quite secure, so we go north in order to hold the enemy advance. And it's very important to do this together, like we are doing right here, since we are more able to hold each other's back and focus down enemy tanks faster. So after quickly shutting down the Object 777, we relocate our attention towards now different flanks. Backstabber is still maintaining an eye out in the north, but I am already turning around and noticing the gap we now left in the center, that now the enemy team has no trouble at all to make their push along the center flank. So here an example of turning attention towards a single tank, the Super Conqueror, me driving around to help my platoon mate out, and my platoon mate Backstabber trying to deal with it as quickly as possible alongside my support. But right now I'm also checking the other side in case we are getting flanked. And this kind of feeling inside a platoon is like having eyes in 2 separate directions. Well as guns, of course. And that is really powerful if you are in a platoon, to see and counter enemy attacks from different flanks in case they are now pushing multiple flanks. So more and more enemy tanks are trying to get a crossfire off. However, with our attention focused at one direction at a time, you really feel much more powerful when facing enemy tanks one at a time, like we do right here. First shutting down the CS-53, after it we just roll further along towards the D-30 and we pretty much have secured the flank right here. And at the very last of this battle, trying to, well, clean up and go for the artillery, it's very nice to get, well, kind of surprise spotted here and find out that the arty was on a very unexpected place, giving our platoon and this has to be said, a well-deserved Brothers in Arms medal. So in this game you kind of see the ascension of a wolf pack, supporting each other when engaging enemy tanks. And especially when you are getting pressured from multiple flanks, having sight and shot at those multiple tanks really helps out in scenarios like these, where enemy tanks are advances from multiple directions. And when focusing your sight at one particular direction or one particular tank, you are much more confident to push out and focus fire down the enemy tank. So from one great teamwork battle replay to another. This time with Sifra GM playing in his T-44 and Tank Buster Dani in his dispersing. So Dani and Sifra are going together once again, like we saw in the first replay, towards a more distant flank. And normally going to a more distant flank is kind of risky. You can get pushed if there are more enemy tanks right there, but you have so much more security. When enemies might turn up, they have a harder time to rush you that way, because you have support from your fellow platoon mate. However, in this scenario, the enemy tanks don't really show up right here, right now, so for the time being, they have a very nice crossfire. But as enemy tanks are pushing more towards our cap circle, this position gets a lot more dangerous since the enemy have lined up a crossfire. So retreating from this location while you still can is very important, and very important to recognize when you have to retreat if you see such a crossfire develop on the minimap. So in order for Sifra to get a shot on the Carnarvon, he advances over the ridge, but since he is still in a crossfire, he has to advance more towards the riverbeds in front of him. However, this turns out to be a perfect position in order to have multiple shots at multiple enemy tanks, and more important, have sight at the cap circle from cover. And for a while, Sifra doesn't really experience a lot of pressure at his position. However, now that the enemy tanks have reached the cap circle, pretty much claimed it, they almost always get confident with this amount of kill lead to rush further and pick off the final few tanks. But here a sublime cohesion between Sifra and Tankbuster Dani develops, while Sifra is still at a relative defensive position, which is only secured if he gets rushed. If the enemies do that, Tankbuster Dani can give support fire from behind, while in the meantime Sifra also diverts the attention from Dani away, so he can give support more reliably without taking damage himself. So now you see how the enemies realize that this is too late and try to advance more carefully. But this only gives the two platoon mates more time, keep them lit up and pick them off. Also a small shout out to the allied UDES, Shockwave 34, who is also following up this plan perfectly. However, the capture progress is getting closer and closer towards an end, so Sifra does need to put more pressure on the cap. However, he doesn't get the shot off, but Dani does, resetting the cap circle once again. However, Sifra is now at a pretty exposed location. He cannot really retreat from there, and unfortunately he gets a little bit overconfident, and also at the same time the UDES gets flanked by the Borask, leaving Dani alone. However, because the Leeuwen is capping to no avail for now, the AT-15 is too slow to reach Dani on time, and the Borask, well, I don't really know what he was doing in the time, throwing the game perhaps, I guess. But he doesn't show up for a while, and then decides to cap just when it is too late, giving the platoon members the victory. So once again in this battle you are seeing some great teamwork. They showed that going as a platoon towards an isolated flank gives you more security in order to work that flank and create a crossfire. It was only later on, when they themselves were getting crossfired, was the moment they had to retreat. Also Sifra in particular got some perfect locationing in this battle by a very natural flow of reactions to events, from retreating from the crossfire at almost the right time, and after that going towards that more stronger position in order to counter at first the Carnarvon, and later on getting towards that very strong position, which might be due to coincidence when engaging the Carnarvon and having to retreat further into the riverbeds. But after that he utilized that particular position perfectly, having multiple shots and lighting up enemy tanks, which gave these two platoon mates a perfect cohesion, with one locating at a defensive hard to push position and the other giving support fire from behind. And even though the win might be more due to luck, they still deserve it by the amount of skill and teamwork which was displayed here. And then we are going to our final teamwork battle in this video, featuring It's Godly's Tankbuster once again, showing that he is quite a good platoon mate to have, and also Stratege 1 in a full Borask platoon. And yes, I know it is a Borask platoon versus tier 6. Even though they are top tier, they still display some very good teamwork elements, which could very well also have worked at tier 10. And once again, it's pretty much the go-to strategy for platoons, going towards the same flank together to be able to support each other whenever necessary. However, after a while, It's Godly's realized that they don't really have sight at the middle, so he takes over the role as a forward scout. And here against the 40 TP, they are pretty much showing off the power of the combined Borask clips. So for a while, It's Godly's drives around the middle, acting like a forward spotter, while Dani and Stratege are giving support fire. But It's Godly's does eventually pay the price by getting a bit too exposed towards the enemy Progetto. But It's Godly's, like Sifra in the previous games, gets in a perfect location, this time to spot the enemy advance from multiple sides. Again, showing you how important platoons can be in order to maintain vision and pressure on multiple flanks. The only thing he has to do is not to fire to maintain this location. However, he eventually does do it, not sure if that is the correct play, but he gets some damage off and still lives. However, a little bit later, it really wasn't the time to fire, and It's Godly's got shut down from one of many enemy tanks who had a line of fire at it. A quite important learning moment for one, if not the best player of our clan. So you see that even the best can have some learning moments from time to time. So after Tankbuster Dani and Stratege lost their forward scout, they got back and defend the side by coordinating fire at advancing enemy forces. It also helps that this corner of the map is quite hard to push. However, the enemies get further and further and eventually do reach Stratege at the back line. However, another example here of some supporting fire. However, too late to save his platoon mate, Dani still managed to kill the SU, which without the spotting of Stratege would mean that this would become a harder 1v3 instead of the way easier 1v2. I mean 1v1 against the last standing enemy heavy. And after a bit of search and find, it's no surprise that Dani outwits the enemy heavy tank by shooting him once, reloading and retreating behind bushes fast enough to get spotted and destroy his last opponent. So in this battle you saw how strong a platoon of Borasks are. Very strong. And again in this scenario there was one spotter and in this time two supporters, giving It's Godly's a lot of spotting damage, assisting damage, while the other two were dealing the damage in order to support. There was some great positioning by It's Godly's in this battle. When he was reduced to a one-shot, he got towards a perfect bush to spot multiple directions, and also the marksmanship by Dani, especially at the end of the battle, was also excellent. And of course Stratege, who was at the right time at the right place. He might not appear quite impactful this game, but simply being able to support his platoon mates even if he didn't engage that much and die, much like you see in Strongholds, where players who did small amount of damage make the win more likely to happen, to get focused down first, but allows the other team members to get more damage off. So in conclusion, before we end this video has showcased the power of platoons, the teamwork which can really make the dream work. Giving more security and power whenever you go. You just feel easier to engage enemy tanks when you are a wolf pack close to each other and can easily focus down enemy tanks by the right communication. It also generates scenarios of cohesion between a spotter, a forward spotter / defender of a certain location, and a supporter who is able to get the damage off from the backline. And of course it's especially fun to do with friends or clan members which you can talk with throughout the several communication programs. Maybe you can use the one in World of Tanks or external communication programs like TeamSpeak or Discord. It makes platooning so much more fun, interesting, and just great to have these amazing games. So when you want to platoon next time, do make sure that you might pick the same tank type at least, or even better, pick the very same tank and go out and wolfpack and dominate the battle, or dominate the engagement wherever you go, even if you are losing the battle. So that has been it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Laters!